our conditions are here, actions are here. So we're adding another condition to the same event. So I'm going to click add condition. I'm going to scroll down and I'm looking for timers and time. I'm going to left click here and we're going to go to value of a scene timer. Don't let the name of that get to you. Just know that this is going to allow us to make our timer. All right. I'm going to left click there. And for our time in seconds, this is a time in between our bullets. This is going to be the thing that keeps our bullets from being bunched up. So we're going to put in 0.025. Now we need a name for the timer, right? So for the name, we're gonna name this bolt timer. So I'm gonna hold shift, select quotations. Some things in Gdevelop need quotations. It's actually pretty easy to remember. Things that you put in yourself, a lot of times, like names, particularly names, need to have quotations around them. Okay, so we put in a quotation. We're going to name this bolt. I'm going to put a capital T, timer. And then I'm going to hold shift and put in quotations again. And this is actually, I apologize, this is actually 0.25 that we want. So this is going to be a quarter of a second. All right. So this is the time is set for 0.25. Our timer's name is bolt timer, which we know since we named it, this needs to be put in quotations to have this work correctly. So now with that done, we're going to click OK. Okay, so our timer is set up. We're saying there we want, when this N key is pressed, we want, things to be set up so that when every quarter of a second, 0.25 of a second, something happens. So now over here in the action, we set up the what. And what that what is we want to be done is we want to reset this timer so that every time this N key is pressed, this timer makes our bullets spaced out. And long story short, that makes it so our bullets aren't our bullets or bolts aren't all bunched up. So I'm going to click add action. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to look for timers and time. I'm going to left click. I'm going to go to start or reset a scene timer. I'm going to left click. This wants to know the name of this being Gdevelop wants to know the name of our scene timer. We're going to put in quotation, bolt. Remember, we put a capital T on this. It's got to be exact, by the way. Timer, quotation. So with that, we're then going to click OK. Okay, so let's test this out to see how this works. How it looks, I should say. Works and looks. Okay, and you can see now I can hold the button down, or even when I press the button, our bolts are spaced out nicely. So that's what we want. So I'm going to click here to close that. Okay, for the things that happen here, as well as any sub-events here, I only want this to happen one time when we press this N key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Add Condition. I'm going to go to Advanced. And I'm going to go to this Trigger Once While True. I'm going to left-click there. And then I'm going to click OK. And this just sets it up so that this will only, these things here, as well as these sub-events, will only happen once when we press that N key. Okay, now after all that, now we're finally going to get to our health bar. We're going to go to New Scene. And we want this health bar to react to when this opponent is being hit, okay? So we want to put a variable on this opponent. And a variable is basically a holder of things. In this case, it's holding information of a value. And that value is 100. Okay, so we want to put a variable on this that says this can be hit basically 100 times, all right? And the way we're going to do that is we're going to look to where we see opponent here. We're going to left click and see where we see edit object variables. We're going to left click here. Now this doesn't have any object variables. So we're going to click plus. And then we see this variable here name. We want to change this to a name that makes sense. We're going to name this capital V, so we know this is dealing with a variable. Then health. So that's the name of this variable. And this variable is basically a container. It's going to hold a value. That value is 100. So we're going to left click. So there's two lines, V health. We're going to click here. And here is going to be where we put the value in. This is how we know that this is 100. And this basically means our life bar, health bar, life bar, health bar, same difference for the most part. Our health bar is a 100. So we're going to enter in 100. Then we're going to click apply. Okay, so now that we have variable set up, and remember, we put the variable on the opponent, not on the life bar. The life bar is going to health bar. The health bar is going to show what happens to the opponent, but the variable is on the opponent. This is just showing what happens. You understand? The variable is here. Okay, so we're going to go to back to new scene events. And if anybody's out there, I'm used to doing tutorials. I have a Blender tutorial where I have a good deal of Blender tutorials on there. Sometimes people get upset with me the way I explain things. I'm explaining things for artists. If you're a programmer, you're looking, why is he explaining that, blah, 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 that way. I'm explaining it for artists. I'm also explaining it for just in the easiest way that I personally can think of how to explain it. If you're just wondering, like, why am I saying things like the way I'm saying that? That's how I do things with my Blender tutorials. That's how I'm doing it with Gdevelop as well. So anyway, with that done, what we want to do is we want to make up a new event now. So to make up that new event, we want to make sure that this is our sub event. We don't want to click here. We click here. We just don't want to. We want to click here. The way you can tell you're clicked right. See this blue line going along here? We know we're clicked correctly on this event, and that means we can left click on new event. Now we have this new event right here. Now you can move the events around and adjust them. However, it's easier just to make them up the right way. So, and some of the way I'm explaining this too is I am fairly new to Gdevelop. As I learned Gdevelop myself, just some of the small things that I didn't think of, like making an event. You know, I was clicking here, so that's why I'm telling you guys this stuff. Okay, so a condition shows Gdevelop when something happens, and the action tells Gdevelop what to do when that happens. Sometimes you want an action to go constantly, not look for one specific thing to happen, but just to run constantly. When you want that to happen, you leave that condition empty. That's the case with what we want to do here. And what we want to do here is we want to have the bolt. We want to have the health bar correspond to our opponent. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to left click on add action. We're going to go to sprite. We're going to go down to size. And then see this scale on X axis. We're going to left click there. And we want to modify the scale, the width of an object. Which object do we want to modify? That would be the health bar. Okay. So we want to put an equal sign because we're basically connecting the health bar to our opponent. So we're going to left click here. We're going to select equal or set to. And then for this, what we want to do is we want to go to the variable of our opponent. So we're going to click here. We're going to go up to common action for all objects. We're going to scroll down to variables. Now it's important that you went up to common action for all objects, then variables. The reason why I say that is there's variables. There's multiple variables. There's object variables, scene variables, and global variables in Gdevelop. We want to work with an object variable. So by going to common action for all, then come down to variables, we can see our objects variable here, which is the type of variable that we want to work with. We're going to left click here. Then we're going to go to object. And the object that we want the variable for is our opponent. So we're going to left click on opponent. I'm going to the side here just to see this menu. I want to get that out of the way. So I'm going to left click there. Now here's our variable. So we left click. And now we can see our V health, which is what we want. That's the variable of our opponent object. So we're going to left click